can't be against bullying without actually doing something about it. Randy Weingarten. Welcome to the Guyana Dialogue. I'm your host, Shamiza Ali, and it is truly a pleasure being here with you this evening. Our topic tonight is an evaluation of the various cash grants and measurements and measures announced by President Dr. Irfaan Ali. The Guyana Dialogue is being sponsored by a coordinating council of Guyanese based in the US, Canada, the Caribbean, and Guyana. Funding support is by well known philanthropist Dave Narayan from Dave West Indian Imports. Please welcome my moderator for tonight. He is a distinguished political and social scientist, Dr. Tara Singh.
Thank you very much, Shamiza, and welcome to our viewers and
Welcome,
our
Dr. Tara.
panelists.
And our other panelist tonight is Dr. Gangaram Das, who is a professor at Lincoln University, and they have both worked in Guyana. Our guest tonight is the chairman of the private sector, and he is also the CEO of Geico Construction, Mr. Komal Singh. Good evening and welcome, everyone.
Good evening. Thank you
Good
very
evening.
much.
Please go ahead, Dr. Tara.
All right. Thank you very much, Shamiza. And today we are very honored to have a distinguished son of Guyana, Mr. Komal Singh, who is the chairman of the Private Sector Commission in Guyana, and also, as Shamiza just said, I believe the owner and CEO of Geico Construction, which is one of the largest construction companies in Guyana. So he is a man who can reconcile theory with practice, what you call it in that sense, praxis. So we are very happy to have him here. And before we go on to our topic proper, I know you had this big international conference, business conference in Guyana. Can you give us a little synopsis, a few minutes, um, why you had this conference and what you think was a positive outcome of it, and who are the participants?
Okay, thank you, Doc, and thank you, Shamiza. Hello, Dr. Ganga. How are you doing?
Okay.
Doc, the International Business Conference that took place this week in Guyana is it's one of many conferences that's put together by various party stakeholders. This one this week was very unique because it brings together hosts from Suriname and Guyana, and it was very strategic with the development that is taking place in Guyana and Suriname. There can be tremendous amount of synergy utilizing some of the resources that we have in Guyana and that's already set up rather than redoing it back into Suriname. So I think the conference bringing Suriname businesses and Guyanese businesses together was one that was very thought out. The participants on this event came from a wide cross section of people and businesses from the Caribbean and North America. We've seen people all the way from the United States, Canada, UK, the entire Caribbean basin. We have seen from Bahamas being here, Barbados, Suriname, and we can go on that list. The over the last 3 days, it was very interactive. There have been quite a bit of business opportunities. These conferences are very important because Guyana is on the development path right now, and because of our limited capacity to cope with what is taking place. This conference creates a platform and an opportunity for local businesses to reach out to companies who might be aligned to what they're doing locally and find strategic business partner, thus allowing them to develop and grow to meet the demand of the economy and our country within the shortest possible time. So I think this conference over the last week was very successful, looking at the amount of participation it had, both from foreign companies and local companies. Thank you.
When it's about synergy, like in the bauxite, is there a plan to do a joint aluminum plant project or separate
Look,
by the Minister of
just like
Natural
when
Resources? And he said he established the alumina plant at Lynn. So is there any synergy? Is Suriname planning, or they doing a joint project with the alumina, as far as you're aware?
Not that I'm aware of at this point in time. I think a lot of focus right now on some of the partnership and the synergy is in the field of the oil and gas at this point in time, and agriculture.
Oh,
Agriculture being a big
okay.
topical issue in the region right now. Right?
All right. Just one. I know the government might be in the budget process now. Is the government consulting development of the 2025 budget?
The private sector have always, over the years, submitted budget proposal to the government. Some of the areas that we see that's going to improve our businesses, and also at the same time, some of the areas that we see that will help to make sure that some of the benefits and the initiative that government wants to put out actually reaches a wider cross section of people in the country. So the private sector currently is in the process of gathering data from our membership, and we're hoping by the end of this month or so we should be in a position to submit the draft proposal to government for us to have a conversation and for their consideration.
Really favorable.
Dr.
Um,
Tara?
Get you on and off,
yeah,
Doc. I'm not.
something freeze. Are you hearing me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
You hear me now?
Yes,
Yes.
loud and clear. Yeah.
All right. All right. Let's go. Sorry about that technical hitch. Let's go. The
All right.
president had announced 200,000 per household, but then he revised it. There are so many technical issues involved in defining a household. So they come up with this idea they reduce the grant to 100,000, but to give to each adult above 18 years as of January 1st. So let's talk about that. You think that was a good move from the government to instead of giving 200,000 per household, you give 100,000 per each adult above 18.
Doc, yeah, this is one of the unique thing about this government. They listen to their people. Yes, the government did, in fact, last week announce that they're going to be doing 200,000 per household. But like President Ali said to this yesterday in his announcement, after reviewing and getting feedback from the community and people and businesses, they recognize that there may be some challenges in identifying what a proper household is, and instead of people benefiting, you might create more havoc. And I think from that standpoint, the decision was taken to retract the 200,000 and do it at 100,000 for each adult who became 18 years January of this year. Now, I think that's an excellent move. You have more transparency. It's more easy. It's more manageable to distribute and identify who those persons are, because you can do it now either with an ID card or a passport. So I think it's going to cost government a little bit more money because now it's all the adults. But at the end of the day, it's going to be a very transparent process, and more persons will end up benefiting from it with less controversy within their own home and family circles.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Ganga. Your question or
Yes, hello, Mr. Komal Singh. Nice to have you here again. You have a lot of background on the Guyana's economy, so we can rely on your expertise. The way I see things, there's the overall effect of the president's initiatives, and then there are the sectoral ones. Overall, there are two streams where the effects will be felt: the income stream and then the price adjustments. So the president's tentative measure is an experiment, just like when Dr. Thomas had suggested $5,000 per household. That's experimental. There's no book solution to what is the correct income that should be applied. It's all experimental. But what needs to be looked at are when we make adjustments, band of people are what income bands of people are impacted on. So you have high income, you have low income. So there needs to be some flexibility in the approach so that we don't apply the same measure that you go for the lower incomes to the higher incomes people. That's something they have to look at and tweak the plan as they go. So there is the idea of bringing the individual to have a constant market basket to purchase after this adjustment of income. And the president need not adjust all baskets because some people can really afford at their present income scales and so forth. And more attention should be given to those in the lower echelons on the income scale. And so the question is, uh, do you have some ideas on how we can combine the cash grant with some in-kind measures so that the consumer or the people that are targeted would have a constant quantity of market basket that they can purchase. They can do that this year, and perhaps next year we can have another round of revision because, as I said, there are no fixed solutions. All of this would be as an economic experiment, first of its kind in Guyana, attempting cash grant. But we need to have our conceptual framework and our targets in sight. So, how do you see in kind plus cash grants?
So, excellent point, Doc. the the cash grant, pretty much, if you looked at it and if you looked at it around the world, I mean, it's going to have a multiplying effect. You know, the $60 billion injection into the economy as disposable income, not everyone is going to be spending that money to buy goods and services. Some people are going to be putting it on investments on their property, buying cars. Some people are going to leave it as savings, etc. But if you looked at some of the other measures that President Ali had actually announced, it shows that yes, he's not just focusing on that cash grant by itself as a one-off, because like you rightly said, there might be some people who have more needs than some other, and it is for that reason you would have noticed also that there were some other measures that was discussed, and that is, for example, the 10,000 per child increase in tax deduction per family, the $10,000 vouchers for children. Um, they've also had the public sector next year. The minimum wages for every single public sector will be at a minimum of $100,000. Those measures are sustainable and they are going to be reaching to the ordinary person and some of the people who needs it more. The removal of the tuition from the University of Guyana is also an excellent move. That's also affect and meet the ordinary person. You would have agreed, me, that over the years, reaching tuition money and sending kids to University of Guyana has always been a challenge to a lot of family. A lot of people are not able to get the loan to send the kids to school. The removal of this right now will actually significantly help those persons who are having a lot of challenge in the old days going forward. So yes, your point is well taken, but if you look at the other measures, the government did in fact cater for some of those stuff in this year. But like you said, government is not going to continuously give out the cash grant. If you listen to Vice President speech today, also he said, you know, this is not going to be a continuous stuff. It's going to be on a need basis, and they're going to review it. All right, depends on the situation, depends on the income, and depends on what is happening in the marketplace. But some of the other measures that was announced are sustainable measures that going to actually go forward for a long time and benefit a wide cross section of people.
Yeah, yes, that's very refreshing to note these other measures. That would be in the list of in-kind measures that would help the general population there. You know, UG students in particular, and the children with the school vouchers. That's very commendable. Um, the the other type of question would be the pricing mechanism. Of course, with the infrastructure program, government job creation has really skyrocketed. So that would be a market adjustment. Wages and salaries would have to be paid, and workers would benefit there. But what about the those who are in the poverty below the 40% or within the 40% poor, according to World Bank definitions?
Well,
How can we apply pricing measures to help that group?
Well,
let
well,
me
okay, go ahead, Doc.
let me just intervene here with the World Bank figure of 40% was for 2017. Since then, that thing has changed significantly. And Mr. Komal will comment on that. There's hardly anybody in Guyana who can say they are unemployed now. And then the government has employed over 13,000 part-time. They're really full-time, but part-time workers will lift them. If you check them for one, that will lift them above the poverty level, which the World Bank defined as 6 $6.80 per day. And with all the cash grant and all these other grants that are given to children, is etc. So, Mr. Komal, go ahead. I just want to clarify that my own view is that the poverty level in Guyana is less than 15%.
So, Doc, you touched on a very important point here. That number, nobody in this country works for $6 per day. All right. The average person in this country right now has an opportunity to earn more than almost $20 per day. Our labor market is short by in excess of 60 or 70,000 people right now. Is it in the red in the labor market? Um, Cost of labor have actually increased by almost 80% within the last 2 years. Your number for 15% on poverty line, anybody who is in poverty in this country right now, I think something is really wrong with them, because there is so much opportunity in almost every single village across this country for everyone to have an employment. And like you rightly mentioned, the workers that government have introduced across the country, that 13,000 weekly workers, that contributed significantly to single parents who are at home not working at all. Right now, they have an opportunity to have an income weekly into their family. Um, the 65 or 70,000 person that is short within the manpower on the workforce right now, every single person have an opportunity to do one or two jobs in order to keep up with the pace of what is happening in Guyana. So the number that World Bank is showing on those poverty line, I think those numbers really need to be relooked at, and a deep dive needs to be taken into what is happening locally, and you will find that those numbers are very unreal. I even think we're way below 5% on poverty line. All right. Yes, there are some people who need some development, and that is why government has also introduced a lot of these programs to help people, to educate them and pay for those education and bring them up to speed. That will help a lot of people to bring them out of poverty. They're now going to be qualified. They're going to have the competence and the requisite qualification to make themselves and apply and get better jobs, thus improving their lifestyle and their income level.
Yeah, I think we had a Minister of Labor on the program here, and he said he estimates the unemployment rate is just about 3 or 5%. Whereas if you look at the International Labor Organization figure, they will come up with 10 to 15%. They need to be reviewed now, given the dramatic pace of development in the country. So we cannot use those old figures as any good basis now. You being a businessman, chairman of the private sector commission, you travel all over the country, have all these conferences. I'm sure you have a good hold on that. But Dr. Gang, you have a follow up?
Yes,
Is your question?
it's very commendable what the government is doing with the educational subsidies and the school programs, the voucher, and so on. There's another element of cost that needs to be tackled, and that is transportation costs. And in this area, the government took some initiatives regarding fuel subsidies, but the consumers, they're far removed from these production accounts of the businesses, so that the gains that businesses experience might not translate or and be passed on to consumers. Can you comment on what's happening in this area?
Look, you're perfectly right when it comes to fuel. When you look at where fuel prices currently, all right, almost all the product have zero taxes and duties on it at the moment. It therefore means government have actually absorbed those costs for duties and taxes. And because of that, right now, fuel price is where it is today. Imagine if we still had a 10 and 20% duty on imported fuel, all right, where those prices are going to be. Now, yes, I think utilizing this method was an excellent method because every single person who drives a car and needs to buy fuel, this reduction or this initiative had actually affected and had a positive impact on their pocket. Um, those money, yes, definitely it was able to trickle down to them. You see, we have three different companies again. You have Gael, Rubis, and Sol. There's some other small retailers in the country. But when you look at the price, as long as duties are removed, and historically, all right, having spent 70 years in this industry, historically, as long as duties are removed, all right, all these companies go right away and drop their prices. Maybe they may have old stock, they might sell out the old stock, but as long as the new shipment come in that attract zero duties or a reduced tariff, those are passes straight down to the consumer. So removing taxes and duties from fuel is a very good initiative because it have a direct impact and injection to the ordinary people. And we have seen that, like I said, historically and currently we're seeing that taking place.
Um, so what I would suggest is that there should be some sectoral analysis of the effects of the fuel subsidies or, on businesses. By doing these studies, you would be able to evaluate how it impacts the consumers' accounts, that's their consumption accounts, versus businesses' investment accounts, and whether these two sides are balanced. The production and investment accounts of businesses, for example, I had seen an article where a company was going into agriculture. So I was wondering how they're going to make the venture profitable. Then I remembered, well, there's an incentive regarding the fuel subsidies. I was hoping that that was not the main incentive for that business, because you could have absentee landlords or absentee farmers who benefit from these subsidies, and they don't come up with some consumer products that can demonstrate the directly the benefits to consumers. So I would suggest that some studies need to be done. There's some monitoring of the effect of subsidy of on fuels, so that the consumers would feel satisfied that yes, uh, we're benefiting from the subsidies on fuel.
So you touched on a good point here again. Look, the agriculture sector, almost everything in the sector right now have zero tariff. Fertilizer, tires for tractors, agriculture equipment. There's no duties on it. There is information surrounding the effect of those initiatives. All right, and I think if you need, we can try to gather it through the private sector and share it, especially the fuel. Look at the power company bill, for example. If the government was not subsidizing fuel, our current electricity bills would have been a lot higher than where it is currently. Currently, it's almost about 26 cents per kilowatt hour. If you inject fuel and duties into that right now, that rate will go all the way above 35 to 40 cents per kilowatt hour. All right. And that's just one example that you can use as a benchmark. on how effective the fuel subsidy is having on impact on the people and the businesses. And that's why I use GPL as a guide for this argument.
Okay. All right. Coming back, giving each adult 18 years and over 100,000. I know a lot of people have expressed comments what they will do this money, etc. But the vice president said it clear. They cannot tell people how they should spend the money, and I agree with that. Now, adults over 18,000, based on the last census 2012, I know this census is scheduled to be released before year end, is about 460,000 in the population. Um, and that's a lot of money. As I said, it will cost them more than a 9 billion, or I don't know how much, or more, not nine. Do you know the cost of this to the government? How much
Approximately
is
six, approximately 6 billion.
60 billion? 60 billion, yeah. It's a heavy cost, and most of the money will come from the oil grant, from the oil revenues. Is that correct?
Not sure. I'm not sure where it's being sourced from, but I think it's going to come out of the overall consolidated fund. Um, I mean, we're doing
Mm,
quite a bit of business right now, so the economy is doing well. I'm sure some
mm,
might come out of the oil revenue if the consolidated fund don't have
mm,
that much money. Um,
mm. So, well, I asked this question because somebody wrote an article asking they want to know from where was the source to pay out this money. And I think it would be a good idea if the government can really determine of what projects, how much oil money is allocated to each project on a sectoral basis. And that will give the public a better understanding of how the oil revenues are being spent. Because there are still some people who believe the money is being squandered and politicians are gobbling up etc. So I think in the interest of transparency and better accountability, if all if the oil revenues um, could be presented in such a way that for each sector you say, well, 20% in this sector is funded by all funds, 20% from grants, 40% or 60% from tax revenues, etc. What do you think about that idea?
so Doc, the oil revenue right now, I mean, I think this government have done a pretty decent job in making sure that the revenue that has been derived from the oil and gas business is very transparent. Um, and you would have seen almost on every day, every time they sell fuel, those information are public information. The law governing withdrawing money from the National Resource Fund is very straightforward. There's limitation on how much they can withdraw per annum. Those information passes through Parliament. It's not something that has been done under the table. It's very transparent. Every time government take money and spend it on infrastructure or any other stuff from the sovereign wealth fund, it's very clear. It's public information. I don't think I've seen anyone so far where money is being withdrawn and the public is not aware of how that money is being spent. Right?
No, no. My concern is not that really. I'm just saying for proper accounting purposes, it will be good for the public to understand when you say oil money. For instance, if I ask you how much oil money is spent in Because We Care grant, you can't tell me, nobody can tell me how much. Let's just say 100% from oil, 100% from tax revenue. It will be a good thing for the public understanding if you can say, well, look, of this grant or of this Because We Care, we give it so much money is taken from the oil revenue, so much from tax. Or is there's a problem in doing that?
I don't think there's a problem. I think the oil revenue, the spending for oil revenue is very clear on what they can and what they cannot do with the oil revenue. All right. Um, So a lot of the stuff that you might see happening locally, for take for example, because of the care cash grant, I'm to the best of my knowledge, those are not funding coming out of all revenue, but that's coming out of our regular consolidated fund. But I stand corrected to that. But that's to the
Yeah,
best
well,
of my knowledge.
now I understand you might know, but the general public don't know. There's a question Guyanese are always asking: where does the all money go into what projects? That's why I'm asking this question
But
because
Doc,
we get.
that's a very important question, and I think if the information is not out there clear enough for the public to understand what is happening to it, then obviously we from the private sector will look at it and see what is happening. Given the fact that everything that happens in that environment, based on the law and the way the sovereign wealth fund is set up, it's very transparent. But we definitely take note of your comment on that, and see how best we can work with government if it's not out there to make it a little bit more clear out there into the public domain.
All right. The other thing is, going back to Dr. Ganga point, grants. There are basically two types of grant: conditional and unconditional. I think that the PP is trying to link most of the grants they give out as conditional. They're giving it because they want to relieve the pressure for cost of living. They're
Mhm.
giving it because they want to give you school uniform, etc. But some people are advocating for unconditional grants. That is, you give a grant without no accountability. You just give it out. Now, we don't empower people by giving them handout. We empower them by giving them a good job, good education, good health care, etc. That's how we empower people. Cash grants should only be given conditionally and not regularly, or else it will create a dependency syndrome of which people cannot break out. Look,
Mhm.
America has been in existence for so many years, and yet they can't solve the poverty rate. New York City is over 20%. People live in poverty, and the United States, 12%. And so many centuries in the richest country in the world that can't get everybody out of poverty. And Guyanese must understand that too. No matter what government does, there's certain groups of people who you can't pull out. They get enculturated into a culture of poverty, was Louis called. Anyhow, your comments.
So, one of the way of removing anybody from poverty is to educate them. All right. And if you look at some of the initiatives that we talked about earlier, governments have spent significant amounts of money trying to educate our population through the gold program, removing all the tuition from University of Guyana and all the other institutions that people been paying to go to. Those are some classical example of ways where you can remove people from poverty and bring them up to a situation where they can now work and earn and have a better living. Cash grant is not any way, form, or fashion that will help anyone to come out of poverty because that's a one-time injection into the system. It's a one-time income for everybody. It may help them to start a piece of business, to buy a piece of property, to maybe make a down payment on a car or a home, something. But it's not
Exactly.
something that will be
Yeah.
continuous. And that is why you will heard all the
So,
conversations movement here. They have not committed nowhere, form or fashion, that this cash grant will be continuous.
mhm, mhm.
You
Okay.
know.
Yeah,
The,
the use
yeah.
of the
Yeah,
cash.
Dr. Ganga, go ahead.
Yeah, the use of the cash grant makes a lot of sense because it preserves individual choices. They can decide if they want to reduce their mortgage or paint their house or do some other household sector investment at that level. So it's good to give people the cash and let them make their own decisions. That's a
Mhm.
big plus for the use of cash grants. But what we have to do at the same time, while they have choices, we need to monitor the effect on business costs and how that affects prices. And the particular item I already mentioned, that's the subsidy on fuel. So what could happen? We need to compare as Dr. Tara was saying, enumerate the amounts that's coming or that's going from the oil revenue, and it's going to infrastructure, it's going to income transfers, and it's going to the government's new initiatives. So we need to have those amounts so that it's transparent, people can understand how the oil money is spent and how taxation revenues are spent as well. So I would say that there is more work to be done by way of explaining the income stream measures, and also what's happening with these fuel costs and how that impacts on prices. Because right now we take it for granted that the gains by businesses will be transferred to consumers, but we don't know how this is happening. On the other hand, the cost of living, people are complaining about higher prices and the cost of living. So all those subsidy elements that impact on production and costs, they affect prices, but we don't know how they're affecting. We need more information in the same way as Dr. Tara requested, that we want to know how the oil money is spent and how government taxation revenues are spent. But the subsidy elements there's on for
Mm,
businesses to via the fuel costs needs to be analyzed further. I think that's a challenge for the private sector.
mhm. Okay, Mr. Komal, you're
But no, no, my comment on the subsidy remain the same. Like I said, subsidy,
yeah,
the cash grant basically should not be continuous. It should be a one-time
yeah.
injection. It should be carefully analyzed. In this case, the government have carefully analyzed this before they've actually made this
Mm,
public and start doing it. But yes, in any form of subsidy, you want to make sure that it reaches the intended people, which is obviously the ordinary people on the street. And it's for that
mm,
reason you will notice government continues to put measures in areas where it will actually reaches people right down at the bottom, rather than depending on one or two businesses to pass on those subsidy or benefit to the ordinary consumer. All right, they continuously try to look at ways where they can actually remove duties and taxes, so that everybody can actually benefit from those subsidy at the end of the day.
mm. So you're saying that to the extent that there's cash grant, these must be conditional for specific purposes or linked to a particular project or what? Am I clear on that?
No, it shouldn't be linked. I mean, like VP said. I mean, you're giving people the money; they must be free to do whatever they want to do with it. Um, some will go back into the system. Some will become savings. Some will be invested in the form of an asset
Mm,
to individual or businesses.
mm.
Some will be used to pay off loan, and that is why it's going to have a rippling effect throughout the economy. It's not going to be a one
Okay.
area. All right.
Oh, okay. You state that the cash grant might cost the public treasury $60 billion. Um, has any study been done? What's the really likely impact on the cost of living? Is that likely to raise the cost of living by a few points? Some inflationary pressures?
This money will not have any inflationary pressure in my view, simply because the it's not targeted at one specific sector or area, and like I said earlier, it's going to have a multiplying effect into almost every different sector, every different area into the business environment, and because of that, there will be no inflation effect as a result of this money being injected into the system at this point in time. Now, if you recognize also the government is not paying this in cash, VP alluded to it today, that it will be done in form of either check or transferred into people account after they would have done their survey and their analysis. Now,
But
very often people have money in their account. They utilize it as savings also. All right.
mhm. But what about the taxes? How will they be paid?
I didn't get you there, Doc. I lost you for a second.
Those, yeah, those people who live in the interior, where there is
Well, the interior will obviously have to be there. Need to be some exception to the rule for some of the areas, especially the hinterland area where people don't have easy access to banks, etc. So most likely, or in our view, I think government will also look at different option, and the option there may be utilizing cash actually for those people that lives in the hinterland area. But I think all of that needs to be worked out with government before they start the program. But I think most people that lives on the coastal and have easy access to bank,
we having
those
we
funds will
having
be
some
done through
technical
banking.
problems.
Dr. Tara, we can hear Mr. Komal sing very clearly. I think it's probably on your end. Dr. Gangaram Das, please go ahead with your next question.
Yes, how do you see transfers from non-residents, unilateral transfers to local individuals through barrels, the amount that is recorded by the Statistical Bureau as unilateral transfers from non-residents. Locally, we understand the barrels, Christmas barrels that are being sent. Do you have an idea on the size and the role of that, and what are your thoughts on that area?
Look, barrels over the years have continuously been coming into our country. Families, friends have been sending those stuff, especially in Christmas. During Christmas time, we see a lot more of that taking place. Those stuff does, in fact, add a lot of value to families, especially at Christmas time when people are trying to spend extra money to upgrade their home, buy different stuff for their family. The barrel business that we coming back to the population, I think, is one that add great value to families, and that is why if you notice during Christmas time also, the custom and excise department have actually increased in terms of clearing of those barrels to remove some of the stress that you will have at the custom, the port of entry with these barrels. So from a private sector standpoint, I think we welcome that. It adds value to families in Guyana.
Um, I think before the oil revenue kicked in, remittances from overseas used to account for about 20% of the national budget. So they did play a significant part. I know up to recently, over 300 something million per year are being remitted by overseas Guyanese to Guyana. And that played a crucial part in stabilizing the economy in the 90s, the 2000, and even up to 2015. Um, Dr. Ganga, you should be
Yeah, well, this that's coming from overseas. It's similar to what the government is trying to do, from the government sector to the household sectors, from the external sector to the household sector. And Mr. Komal Singh made an important point. He doesn't expect this to affect relative prices, which is good. The idea is to restore the consumer to have a constant market basket of goods to consume per family, per household, whatever measuring unit we use. So that's a big plus there. The role of the remittances, transfers from overseas, would definitely help the economy and help, of course, the individuals. But we also, as I keep repeating, we need to keep an eye on the price effect, the relative prices. Otherwise, it could seep into the inflationary spiral if we don't look on the
mm,
supplies of local goods to the marketplace,
mm,
because of course the demand will have increased. We've got to make sure that we have adequate
mm,
supplies from cheaper sources, overseas included. If the local sectors, farmers can't deliver, I remember Northwest We had an abundance of tomatoes. We used to sell tomatoes in the local markets when I was in the high school to supplement incomes. So, tomatoes from Mr. Chait in the Northwest District helped a great deal. And I think I recall cabbages from Blackbush Polder used to flood the city. So we need to go back to those old methods and ways of increasing supplies that impact on the cost of living. Also, availability. There might be a tendency for hoarding.
Mm,
Once I
mhm,
told Dr. Jagan, well, if you have to take direct measures, let the trucks go by the markets and supply the rice from that point. You can't have hoarding of rice and oil and other essentials happening because that will
mhm.
fuel the inflationary spiral. We need to take some direct measures if inflation becomes intolerable. So, what are your thoughts on that? Do you agree or?
Doc, excellent observation. Look, and that is why giving out the cash grant without restriction of what people can do with it, it's an excellent initiative. Just imagine if it was given out to just buy food or good food stuff for your home, then obviously the market would have had a immediate pressure on the demand and supply side because it's not tied to one specific need or guide say you must buy X or you must buy Y. Um, it allows every single individual right now the opportunity to do whatever they want with this money. And because of that, the market shock will not be there to create an inflation position as a result of the cash grant. All right. But yes,
All
the
right.
demand and supply also plays a pivotal role in what's happened where inflation is concerned.
One final thing before we open up the questions from the viewers. Um, I want to ask you, the opposition party, I don't remember which one of them, are calling for cash grants on an annual basis. And they're citing a figure as much as 5,000 per household. I'm sure you know about this.
Mhm.
So you see, they're trying to create a handout economy. And what do you think about this, their position?
I disagree with that 100%. It just don't make sense. Look, we have an economy that is growing, that is moving at a rapid pace right now, that is creating opportunity in almost every single sector, that is creating employment opportunity also for every single level of Guyanese and non-Guyanese national. Why would you want to give cash grant continuously to your people? Spend the money like what this government is doing. Spend the money in areas where you can educate your population. You will create more employment opportunity. You will create more sustainable development. Spend the money in those areas. So for long term, your people will now be able to benefit from continuous employment, continuous income stream, good education, good health care. And that is why, when you look at some of the initiatives that are currently being taking place here in Guyana, from a private sector standpoint, we applaud the government for it because it creates um, a sustainable environment for everybody, for the businesses, for people, for your health, for your education. If you continuously have a handout economy, then your people are going to become very complacent. You will have an economy that is growing, but at the same time, your people is not growing in tune with the economy. And for that, we really appreciate us not going to a situation where you continuously give out handout. The one-off cash grant situation from time to time, based on government analysis, I think that's an excellent position where they should continue to do that on a need basis only and not continuous.
All right, thank you. Shamisa, you have any question from our viewers?
Thank you, Dr. Tara. We do have some comments and questions. So I'll start
Go
off
ahead.
first with Ramona. She says a good analysis will be to find out just how much revenue is being fueled in the different villages, depending on the population, on improvement of the infrastructure for the ordinary man in the street and not necessarily big business or in roads, etc. And this was, as Mr. Komal Singh was speaking of different things. So it's going back a little bit. I have a comment from Sohan Siucharan that says the government of Guyana needs to develop the small business sector to make people more independent. As long as the government remains the largest employer, Guyana will always have racial and political divisions because who is in power will hire their own supporters, friends, and families. Ramona also says that the 100,000 Ghana dollars should most certainly not be spent on more vehicles, as there are too many vehicles already on the roads with abnormal or reckless driving, but perhaps investing on improved housing is the best. Sohan's question is, what plans do the government have for the people of Guyana to survive and thrive after the oil reserves are depleted? Mr.
Okay.
Komal?
Okay, so let me respond to Sohan's question. I mean, I'm not the government, so I won't answer for the government. But what I can say from the private sector standpoint and where we look at stuff right now, and I just allude to the fact where we have seen government doing a lot of stuff to create sustainable employment, sustainable good health care. So that is why they put money into areas that will create long-term opportunity and benefit for our people. They're investing heavily on healthcare, investing heavily on education for our population, so we don't have a population that is not fully educated. So the training also that they're offering in many many areas right now. If you look at nursing, for example, they're looking at training almost 3,000 nurses to make sure that we have enough nurses to satisfy all the hospitals that are currently being built locally. So I think from a private sector standpoint, the way we see it and the way we see the policies of the government at this point in time, we're very confident, that the government is not just thinking and investing for today. The government is thinking and investing for long term when oil and gas is not here. And look, it's a classical example to answer that question to that individual. Guyana, since oil and gas came onto the platform in Guyana, all the other sector, if you remove the GDP, the input from the oil and gas sector toward GDP, you will recognize that all the other sector continues to grow and show development, and that's a classical example to to the public to say, hey, Guyana is not going to fall prey to the Dutch disease, where we're going to neglect all our other sector and focus 100% on the oil and gas sector. Over the last 4 or 5 years, all the other sector continues to show growth rate. Look at the agriculture sector, for example. The entire region is looking to reduce our food import bill by 25% by the end of 2025. And by 2030, they're looking to maybe cut that beyond 50%. And we have seen a lot of massive agriculture development already start taking place in Guyana. And when the gas energy power plant gets up and running and power costs reduced by 50%, we'll see a lot more value added products being produced into Guyana. So 30 years from now, when oil and gas is out of the equation, our economy will be solid in almost all the other sector. So I think for that viewer and for that comment, you're in good hands. If you look keenly into what is happening in Guyana, Guyana is not thinking about today. They're thinking down the line, and that is why they're creating a series of sustainable development within the economy.
Thank you. And speaking of agriculture, Ramona says that agriculture is the first and foremost option. Guyana is an agricultural land. We have another comment from Jailal that says that there is need for social programs to integrate senior citizens back into society and to enhance their lives. I think that's an important comment. The major problem facing small businesses in Guyana is accessing regional and international markets for their products and services. The consulates, Go Invest, Private Sector Commission, and other agencies should help pave the way for Guyanese to sell their products and services because this will boost the economy.
Excellent point. The small businesses in Guyana, it's a lot of them, and they are doing pretty well in in spite of access to fund, which is a big challenge to them right now. But they're doing pretty well. Early this year, there was a job fair. There was a fair and expo in Barbados, and I think over 20 or 30 small businesses went there and showcased their product. There is platform from time to time within the region to help these small businesses to showcase their goods and services to meet the international market. But here's one of the challenge many of these small businesses have, and many businesses in Guyana that does value-added product. It's difficult for us to compete on the international market right now, given the fact that our fuel and energy cost is so high. And that debars us and puts us at a disadvantaged position when it comes to competing from a price level in the market. All right. I think, going forward, when we have cheap electricity, many of these small businesses who are exporting and producing stuff will be able now to compete on the international market a little bit more. But yes, it's a continuous battle with them. They sell the product. I think there's a Stabrook website that was opened up where small businesses can showcase their goods and services. Many of the small businesses right now are also members of the GCCI and the GMSA, and they also have an opportunity to showcase their goods and services to the region whenever they have those expo. And maybe twice a year, I think we're seeing different type of expo we're having where they're allowed to participate in those events.
Thank you. Now, as a person who is very active on social media, I have seen, the interest and the concerns and all of the, people make, there's a lot of humor about the cash grant. And one of the things that I read recently has to do with this is a tactic that the government is using to get people that are 18 and older to register to vote. How do you feel about that? Which I feel is brilliant. If it is a tactic indeed to get people to register, I feel it's brilliant. But how do you feel about that? And is there any truth to that?
Like you said, that's a good thing, but I don't think that's the intention. If that was the intention, the government would have done that from the initial stage. The government went out and made an announcement of $200,000 per household. All right. After feedback from various sector of the society, government recognized there are some challenges in doing it that way. All right. And government decided to retract that position and then reintroduce another one, all right, which makes a lot more sense, which create more transparency, and which also allow people now to benefit in a bigger way, with less controversy. So I don't think that that's the intention of the government, and I think whoever is making that comment or assumption, I think it's not properly thought out. It's ill advised because the government could have done it, like you said, if that was their intention, then they would have not have gone out from the initial stage and said 200,000 per household. They would have started with this right from the beginning. But based on the feedback, and we have seen multiple feedback from social media, persons calling into government, to the ministries, expressing their concern, and government took those information, feedback, and actually retract their position. So I disagree with that comment from the individual.
Thank you. The other question that we have is clarity as to when a person becomes 18 years old. Is it as of January 2024 or is it as of January 2025 to qualify for the cash grant?
And there was some controversy in this here, but President was very clear. This is January 1st, 2024. January
20.
4th, 2024, not 25.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for answering all of these questions, Mr. Komal Singh, and also for being very knowledgeable of tonight's topic and being very transparent. Thank you to our panel, Dr. Tara Singh and Dr. Gangaram Das. Thank you to all of our viewers. Thank you for taking the time to be with us this evening. Until next time, I am your host, Shamiza Ali, and this is the Guyana Dialogue. Good evening, everyone.
Evening. Thank
Um,
you.
Mr. Komal, don't go off. I want to
Yeah.
talk to you.